From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the questions to today's top composers. I'm happy to have you here. In a decades-long composing career that really took off for Christopher Lennertz when his sweetly antic melodic music joined the likes of Alvin and the Chipmunks, Hop, the Smurfs, and Cats and Dogs too, one didn't need X-ray vision to see that an often family-friendly composer had a twisted, seditious side when it came to the decidedly R-rated antics of Sausage Party, all while showing he could play outer space symphonic majesty over 3 seasons of Netflix's Lost in Space, an urban attitude with Shaft, and over 200 episodes of Monstrous Menace in Supernatural. But no show or movie has allowed Lennertz to combine his styles or genres with the wild popularity of Amazon Prime's The Boys. Adapted by Eric Kripke from Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson's DC imprint comic book, The Boys is a wildly hilarious and beyond gory, in-your-face kick-to-the-ass heaven for everyone who hates superheroes to the point of wanting to ultra-violently take them out. No more so than the team headed by Billy Butcher, who's gunning for the smug Justice League, headed by the psychotic wannabe Superman Homelander. Wildly veering from a metal attitude to mock orchestral heroics and song anthems over the course of 2 seasons, Christopher Lennertz truly gets a new level of insanity to play with for season 3 of The Boys. With the show's corporate and social satire given a razor-sharp edge like never before, Lennertz's energetic approach encompasses the heroics of a merciless Captain America, goes through the mental breakdown of Homelander, and pops off a superhero orgy in a way that gleefully plays into comic book scoring cliches while savagely taking them apart, all seamlessly displaying a composer's own exceptional abilities at musically destroying a genre it's pretending to prop up, creating a brilliantly twisted, corporate hero-hating score that Billy Butcher himself would be proud of. And now let's salute a composer who's been undermining the Voight Corporation like no one's business to pick up the pieces for The Boys' orgasmically great Season 3. Let's welcome Christopher Lennertz.
Hello, Daniel.
Well, it's great to have you here. I mean, the season wrapped up yesterday. It's on all the episodes. Man, what a great season. Probably my favorite so far.
Yeah, it's absolutely my favorite. I feel like we've been great from the beginning, but like the way we've sort of so many elements, and this is really what Kripke does so well, but so many elements have come together to sort of come to this conclusion and this massive fight for so many characters. I think the difference between this season is that not only did it have all the action and gore and all the other stuff that the other seasons had, but it really had a full exploration of character arc of almost every character in there. And that it's so satisfying to watch that while still being blown away by the insanity of what's going on visually,
Now, if you live in America, I want you all to throw your questions to Chris. We've got 5 CDs of Season 2 to give away, courtesy of La La Land Records. And if you don't live in America, please send us your questions. One thing that really struck me about the season was just, how politically pointed and just incredibly relevant it was. I mean, now you're a very politically active dude on Facebook, for the cause of the left, as I am as well. But what hit you about that? I mean, just again, the level of the satire.
I first of all, I love, my dad is a retired political science professor, and he actually taught courses in political humor for most of his career. He loved delving into that and how you could kind of sneak people with humor into something they don't realize and maybe get them to laugh at something that they previously wouldn't have found funny or think about something they may not have thought about. I'm not sure how many people we got to do that, but Kripke is very much the same way. But I did say, I will say, I find it amazing for our writing staff that, these episodes were written 2 years ago and the fact that they land today with the power that they land, and you watch something, you're like, oh my god, that literally what Homelander just did sort of just happened, you know, a week ago in Florida or 2 weeks before in Texas. And it just really had to go with how great our writing staff is and how connected and in tune they are with this satire. But yeah, it's kind of amazing to even see how it is. But I do love, and we were just talking on Twitter, Stephen Fleet, the visual effects supervisor on the show, he is just posting you know, the many 1-star reviews that we've gotten in the last 2 or 3 weeks, because it took everybody about a half a season to realize, oh wait a second, they're actually kind of making fun of me, and they're not so happy about it. So all of a sudden all our 5 stars went down to 1 star, and we're, you know, kind of bearing it, you know, as a badge of honor.
Yeah, but what's really great though is that it has fun with everybody. I mean, there are a lot of jokes here targeted towards woke audiences, and it's like everybody gets it equally in the season.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you know, the Brave Maeve, you know, a popsicle stand and all the other stuff at Votland, and you know, it absolutely is skewering the culture of corporatism and the culture of, you know, the fact that, you know, there's a big difference between people having an internal spiritual awakening and changing things, and corporations like Vought saying, oh, well, you know, we're only testing it in 87 right now, we need more lesbian flags, you know, we need more pride flags. You know, that is not really that's not why. The why is actually, you know, a much deeper, you know, exploration of self and a much deeper, you know, awakening. But Vought doesn't do it that way. Vought is all about whatever the focus group says they need to do more of, and, you know, and next thing you know, they'll trot out the deep on a dolphin and be like, oh, you know, we you know, I heard that that dolphins are testing higher, so let's send them down to SeaWorld and have them do that, which is, you know, but it's so appropriate. It's so what corporate culture is all about right now.
You know, if you look kind of like there are so many kind of different themes and again levels to the show, and again, you know, you have a kind of a hard rock attitude, you know, for the most part, I think. How do you think that plays into the whole idea of essentially Billy Butcher getting high on his own supply that he hates and turning himself into a superhero when he has to be?
Yeah, I mean, well, that was really where the whole sound came from. It was a big exploration before the first year, before season 1, for the pilot, of what our sound was supposed to be. And luckily, I have such a long relationship with Eric Kripke, because, you know, he trusted me, and it took a while to find it. You know, in our world, we're meant to use the best players in the best studios with the best equipment to make everything as clean and precise as possible. You know, and that wasn't working. And, you know, and every time we went through, you know, he kept saying, it's too good, it's too clean. And he kept saying, this show has to be about that grittiness of Butcher, has to be about this guy who's literally willing to beat the living shit out of people, and it's bloody, and there's, you know, spit and saliva and blood and guts, and it's all this stuff mixed in with somebody who knows why they're doing what they're doing, doesn't even necessarily know if it's going to work or the right way. It's just all from that visceral area. So it took us, you know, 2 or 3 months, and it was me and you know, at the time it was Matt Bowen, who's been a producer with me along the way and co-written a bunch of the music, especially this year. And Dara Taylor and Alex Bornstein, and we basically had jam sessions at Sonic Fuel, which is very different from the way it normally works in film composing. But we ended up playing lots of instruments that we weren't even good at. So I'm a guitar player. I'm not even a great guitar player. But, you know, I ended up playing drums, and Dara ended up playing some cello. He doesn't play cello. Matt plays violin, and we would play things, and that's what started working. And Eric would even say, you know, at the end of the dub for the first episode, he was like, one cue, he's like, wait, this doesn't sound like it did in the mock-up. Right at the end, it's not working. And what it was all of the mock-ups had the noise of the amp, and then the amp, you know, getting unplugged and hitting the spring reverb and humming every time we did it. And we just didn't clean it up. But then when we mixed it, we cleaned it up. And he's like, no, I want that back. And so we would put back all the noise and the fritzing and all that kind of stuff. So Yeah, so it's really, that's where it all went to, and Lord knows now, once Butcher started taking the compound temp V, which we called it, it all bets were off, and it just got nastier and uglier and more gritty and noisy than it ever was before.
And you kind of get right off to it as well. One thing I love is that how you satirize a very traditional superhero sound, and of course this opens right up with the the kind of apologetic Return of the Seven movie, which explains how Homelander didn't know he was in bed with a Nazi. And again, you're playing exactly the kind of superhero music you'd hear in this really delightful snippet you get with Charlize Theron showing up, and she's just showing up in everything. What to you makes an utterly cliched superhero score, and how do you hope to rip on it?
Well, I mean, it's one thing we definitely talked about at the very beginning, because when this first started, it was all about, it was right when Avengers that was sort of ending the big last couple movies of that, and we'd all gotten to the point where we felt maybe a bit oversaturated with everything that Marvel was doing, especially finishing their first, or that that particular portion of the MCU, and so I think the idea was to take everything that we came to expect, which was everything from chord progressions to the fact that almost all the melodies, it wasn't John Williams where you had trumpets and violins playing heroic melodies. It was almost always the French horns, sometimes the low trombones, always. And so Eric's orders from the beginning was, we need to make the Seven theme feel like Vought did a focus group of everyone who loves Marvel movies and said, give us what you think that should sound like, and then write that, and then let's figure out how to twist it. Which I came up with this idea of actually bending the whole orchestra and using the plugins and things like that we record the orchestra section separately, and we could bend the trombones down, and we could bend the strings up, and we can bend the piano as it plays. It can sort of slow down and warp up and down and things like that, which we do to sort of signify when things are going wrong with this ideal world that Vought tries to present. But it's all starts from this very, very initial idea of what would a Vought focus group say are the most important things about superhero music in the last 15, 20 years, and that's basically what I wrote was that Seven melody.
But as for you, just as a composer, what do you hear and you say to yourself, give me a break?
Definitely the chunking big synth tom, the shun, 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 the chunking synth toms with the orchestration. I love myself a minor 1 to flat 6 progression. It is absolutely just about in every superhero movie probably ever done, but especially in the last 20 years. I did it in this one. It's hard not to do it now, honestly, because it's so incredibly superhero-y. That usually gets me the marching snares, after the end of the big French horn call, then maybe they'll do like the lonely trumpet version of it for when whatever your mean character when it goes into slow-mo and you start doing the Snyder thing, and all of a sudden you're in slow-mo and you've got like a lonely vocal and a sad trumpet. It's very much, it's what everyone does. And so we just went straight for it and said, we're gonna just rip that and poke fun at it.
Now we've got our first question. It's from Louis Versinelli. Happy birthday, Louis. Hey, Christopher Leonard. I am really enjoying all the music from both seasons 1 and 2 of The Boys. My question is for the track for Cindy. While not a very long track, but yet at the same time, so much is going on with it. It sounds fantastic. Can you break down what went into creating that track?
Ooh, I need to remember. That's Cindy from season 2, I believe. Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, that has a couple of techniques that have become sort of standard with our sound. One of the things we do a lot with is we create rhythms out of our feedback. And whether it's feeding back a guitar or feeding back a synth or even a piece of percussion, a lot of times we'll use trying to think if I've got one here, but we'll use like thumb pianos and play it hard and distort it, and that thumb piano turns into a and we'll have it speed up and speed or feedback and sort of with something else and sort of create a syncopation. We did a lot of that, I think, in that track leading up to all of those big hit moments. And then I think the other thing that's in that track, if I'm not mistaken, and this was a Matt Bowen special, I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Matt, because he early on in season 1, he came up with this idea of hitting the cello with a super ball rather than playing it as a normal pizzicato. And it has this like dull thud because of the rubber, but it has a little bit of, it also gets a little bit of the wood on there. So it's got boom, boom, boom. It's got this kind of thing to it. And when you run it through compressors and everything, it sounds like, it feels like a pizzicato if you were doing an orchestra score, but it doesn't sound anything like a pizzicato. So that's been really useful. We've done a lot of that for any time we were doing anything sneaky or building up to an attack. And then the other thing that's sort of, very much part of the boys' sound is just tuning down. And I know my friend Dale Turner, who I went to USC with, is on this, is running this thing. But, there's just a difference when it comes to bass, guitar, whatever it is. They're meant to be, the scale of the instrument is meant to be played, tuned kind of like everyone's used to tuning it. But when you take a bass, low string on a bass or a low string on a guitar, and you tune it down, from an E all the way down to a C or even an A below that, you get all this amazing nastiness, and you hear the strings rattle. Even when you play it open, it goes like that. And it's, that's the stuff that's all over the boys. So almost universally, every guitar ostinato, every guitar hit, every guitar big chord is done where we've tuned down massively. And you get this low grit and grunge of the, of the metal hitting the frets and hitting the wood and stuff that you don't get if it's tuned normally. So no matter how much distortion you put on it, it won't sound like that. It's really all about the tuning and the looseness of the strings.
Now I've got a question from Ivan Sorkin. He says, The Boys is that rare show that can surprise you with plot twists impossible to normal show events. Did it happen with you while you read the script? Sometimes they really did that?
It's actually really funny. First of all, I thought you said that the question, for a second, I thought you said the question was from Aaron Sorkin, which would be amazing if he was watching this show, but I don't think he is. And I'm going to introduce everyone to my annoying dog. That is Elmer Bernstein, who I'm going to let out. Elmer was one of my teachers at USC. So yeah, it's a really great question. And it's funny because I think I might have told you this before, Daniel. I'm not sure if I did, but after the first probably 2 or 3 episodes of season 1, I actually called Michaela and Eric. Michaela's one of our producers. And I said, you know what? Don't send me the scripts anymore. And I don't want to see the show until we spot. And I said, and it's not because I'm busy or whatever. Like I started to notice that the more I watched a scene, the less shocked I was. And I would start going back to things that I'm used to going back to in terms of the music. And when I first saw the scene, especially when I saw the scene in a room with other people, whether it be people who, Phil Segresha, who directed it, or the editor, when I see that scene and they watch me, whether it be the scene when A-Train plows through Robin, or whether it was when they plow through the Whale, the first time you see that scene is the only time you'll ever feel that shock, because now you know it's coming. And so I really started to say, I want to spot that scene instantly after I see it. I don't want to see it 2 weeks before, think about it, let it mellow, and then talk about it in a more clinical way. I want to talk about it in a visceral way. And so really, other than song moments that need to be composed before the season starts shooting, I specifically have a rule where I don't watch the show until I go in to spot it and spot that episode. And I absolutely feel like my instincts are better. My instincts are what the characters are feeling. My instincts are what the audience will feel, rather than letting it sort of gestate for a couple of weeks as my, the clinical side of my brain makes more sense out of it. And I don't think the music wants to be that.
Now, again, let's talk about songs. There are just some absolutely great satirical tunes in the season, particularly the one about chimps can't cry. What did you write for the season? Tell me about just again, Sausage Party had these great, hilarious songs, and now you've got them here. Tell me about the songs of season 3.
So yeah, I had such a blast on season 2. We had 2 songs, and so Eric said, no, we're going to do 4 this year. And so I was super thrilled, and he knows I love musicals, and he knows that I worked with Menken on Sausage Party and Gallivant, and I have such a soft spot. I was Conrad Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie in Easton, Pennsylvania when I was in junior high. So I love musicals, but I especially love satire. And so does Eric. So he came to me, I guess it was like 6 months before the thing started shooting, and he said, all right, I need you to write me 2 like boy band hits. And I need you to write me like a Sarah McLachlan-ish, really bad Sarah McLachlan SPCA commercial, but done like Carol Baskin would do it to raise money. And then I also need you to write me like a big, like Adele, kind of, but super patriotic, like a super, like whatever you would like Born in the USA, but Adele wise kind of thing about Soldier Boy, who's the most patriotic hero we've ever had. And he's like, so that's what I need to go. And I had, luckily I had some help on 2 of them from the writer of the show, from David Reed, who wrote the episodes, did, I believe License to Drive. He co-wrote lyrics on License to Drive and America's Son, which was a great start. It's always great to have someone who's actually writing the story of the episode start me on those. So that was really helpful. And then I got to write Rock My Kiss with Kripke, which is the first time we've ever written anything together. But for those, what I do, as I'm sure you can tell, is I go and I just immerse myself in Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and 98 Degrees, and then I try to figure out, much like we do with the superhero music, I'm like, what is it that makes those boy band songs, those hits, what do they all have in common, and how do I throw that all in a blender with ridiculous lyrics that are way too serious and way too self-important, and do it in a way where we produce something that's, basically all of satire is doing what everyone expects you to do and then just turning it up one more notch, turning it up to 11. And the same thing we did the same thing with the America's Son ballad, and Chimps Don't Cry was just, that was the only one I've written that's been all myself, lyrics and music. And I certainly came from, I had a lot of time writing ballads and singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And I knew that world of Sarah McLachlan and Tori Amos really well. And I don't know if everyone saw on Facebook, but I did have before I had the mohawk, I did have a Tiger King haircut for about 3.5 minutes before I shaved it all off when that show first came out. So it was early in COVID, and I remember us all sitting there and watching it just with our jaws on the ground, especially when Baskin came out and did that, had that song to raise money for her weird sanctuary. And we're like, oh my God. So then when Kripke calls, like, I need you to do that, but do it even worse than she did. And I'm like, all right, I am your guy. Let's do it. So yeah, luckily, and I got to give a huge shout out to Laurie Holden, who sang the living daylights. And, I'm sure you guys have seen the video. She fearlessly stepped into the role of washed up, cheesy, superhero girlfriend. And just like we had, that's the thing. She had little cymbals and we actually have like jungle sounds mixed into the track. And we have the background singers singing behind her, but also singing in between her lines, things like "Help us," send, "We can't cry, we have no tear ducts," which is just so ridiculous. But to me, that's the kind of thing that we all, Daniel, you and I both grew up in the world of Weird Al, and it's like, whether it be that or or some of the old political satire parodies that Capital Steps and other great groups would do. It's like there's a lot of really smart things that can come out of really stupid comedy. And let's be honest, Seth Rogen is a genius of that. You can make people think about really important, smart things by being really stupid on the visceral level, the outer level, and that's what I think we really try to do with these songs. And it's a gift to be able to do that.
But where is Carol Baskin's husband, Chris?
I have my theory. It's probably far under the ground.
So we've got a question from your former classmate, Dale. Any chance of doing something like a musical that would interest you, given your diversity as a composer and songwriter, plus your experience with Alan Menken in the past? And you told me you got a camp going on right now.
Yeah, my older one's at musical theater camp up in Idlewild, and yeah, absolutely. So I've got 2 musical things. I adore musicals, and so I'm writing a stage musical called Be a Part, with I have a co-lyricist, Amina Brown from Atlanta, and it's set in Atlanta, and Fran da Silveira is our writer, and we have an amazing director named Ellie Heyman, who is actually, she won the Theater Guild, I think the Theater Guild Award in New York last year for Angels in America that she did with Glenn Close. So we have a great team, and we're hoping to get that on a stage by next summer sometime, at least in terms of workshops, probably in Atlanta. And then I also wrote a animated musical short, which we're producing in London right now, and that's about a year away, where I wrote the song and the story. And it's a story about a really touching story that's close to my heart right now, about a grandfather who gets a pacemaker, and his grandson who comes out as transgender, and they discover that there's a similarity between the grandchild's first crush and the grandfather's widow, and his sadness, and it just becomes a really great song and beautiful story. And the idea is, that one becomes much like, it's kind of like the Disney movie that Disney can't make. So it's in the world of an Encanto or a Menken or the Lopez's, but it's done with a really topical and relevant subject, both to me and I think the world right now. And so, yeah, I want to write a lot more songs, and thankfully Eric Kripke is such a good friend that he keeps giving me the chance to do it as well. So to be able to go from something maybe a little more serious, like my stage play and then to be able to probably write some sort of, who knows what I'll probably be doing a disco song for next season or something like that. Who knows? It's nice to be able to flex all those muscles and kind of get back to one of the things that made me fall in love with music in the first place, which is theater.
Now, Adonis Seletris would love to know, how often do you play guitar on your scores?
Ooh, it's funny because I never did for a very long time, because I'm not very good. And I used to be better. I used to be much better. Dale used to see me practicing much more than I ever would now. But we have such amazing musicians. We have this literally wizard named George Deering out here in Los Angeles, who we all know and love, who can literally play anything, anytime, better than I could ever dream of. So, for the most part, I never played for myself. I usually, would hire George or Dave Levita or somebody to play really amazing for me and make it much better than me. But luckily, Eric called me and said, we need this music to not sound like good studio players. And I said, well, I've got your guy. That's me. So I can play bad, messy guitar any day of the week. So it's been great to be able to do that and get into like playing guitar again. So I would say, a good portion of all the guitar and bass is played by, it's all pretty much played by me or Matt Bowen, or sometimes Dara and Alex, but mostly me and Matt play most of the guitars and basses and on the show. And it's fun to be able to flex that muscle as somebody who literally, that's all I did when I was in high school in Pennsylvania. Was I went to someone's house and we sat in their garage from morning till night and pretended I was Eddie Van Halen or Kirk Hammett or Satriani or whoever, and that's what I did.
Now, I think one of the characters that, the kind of the feared character who ends up maybe having the most interesting character arc is Soldier Boy, who you definitely Sylvester out on. But again, he's such an interesting character because you just think he's like the psychotic badass, but he ends up being quite like all of the characters, even the most villainous ones, ends up having quite a few layers to himself. What was it like handling that character and the journey that he goes on in the season?
Well, first of all, I think the big thing that we have to touch on is the fact that I wrote music for Jensen Ackles for 15 years as the same exact character. So it was really interesting to me as someone who had to score him, when we get to that first scene, that it's actually a flashback scene, at the Vaughtland, where we show the movies of him as Soldier Boy, because we don't know yet that he's still alive. And it was really strange to not have my hands and my fingers and my sketch pen go to what I'm used to having Dean Winchester sound like. So it was like, okay, I got to restart. But then once I started seeing his performance, he's really an amazing versatile actor, virtuosic actor. He's a much better singer than we allowed him to do this year. I want to go on record saying that he could sing the daylights out of any of this, and he was singing poorly on purpose because of the show and the character. But writing for Soldier Boy was so interesting for me. And Daniel, that I adored writing very patriotic music and really serious, what I would consider to be Americana dramatic music for things like Medal of Honor, European Assault, and Pacific Assault, and doing what I would consider to be, as you said, in the things in the world of Silvestri and Williams, and really honorable stuff. And so now you have a character who not quite so honorable, but also has a lot of demons, as we go, as you mentioned, as we get further in the show, and that's one of the things that I think has been really great with Soldier Boy. Is I started out, the first time you heard his theme, it was absolutely patriotic. It was fully committing to squeaky clean. There is nothing under the hood except for the right thing, the American way. And that's sort of part of our whole satire this season, is like, that's just not true. But it's also not true that he's just evil. He also has this backstory with his father. He was abused. He was killed by his team. He's been on ice for how long? There's all these other elements to it, which is what Kripke and our writers do so well, is they give us this chance to do these multifaceted characters. And that's what ended up happening as you get towards the end of, the moments with, especially when Soldier Boy reveals that, that he's, kind of Homelander's dad. And then that he's massively disappointed with him, which of course there's nothing that would be more horrible for Homelander to hear than his dad doesn't want him. His dad's going to abandon him. And it's like, and so, so there's out of tune pianos, and there's a lot of the childlike, almost like nursery bells that we used back in the first season with, with Homelander and Stillwell, who's, Elizabeth Shue's character, who was really his, mother crush thing. It's such a great character. But that all comes back mixed in with the nobility, the warped nobility of Soldier Boy. And yeah, I mean, that kind of character depth and variety and multifaceted character thing is just not done that much on television, and to be able to put my little stamp on that, along with with the inspiration that our amazing writers do, is just, it's really cool. And it's much different than I get to do. A lot of my movies are not multifaceted. I don't know how I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's not that I adore comedies and I adore doing action films and things like that, but those tend to be, they tend to be a little bit more black and white, a little more delineated in their lines, and everything about the boys is gray, is shades of gray. And you've got lines that are crossed and the lines that are moved depending on what deal you need to make, and the ends justify the means to some people, not to others. And even MM with his daughter, to finally be able to say, I'm not perfect, but you can be proud of me, and I want you to know everything. I want you to know why I hurt. I want you to know our family and my and your granddad and where this all comes from, and the way our country, silenced us as for Soldier Boy's image and all this stuff, and to be able to bring that all together and have so much variety and depth in the music with the sound and the image and the I mean, everything is, the sound is huge, and the palette's huge, and it's really like an amazing canvas to play on that, they don't make shows like this very often, and to be able to have someone gift it to me the way Eric and Seth and Evan did is such a joy.
Now we've got a question from Esteban Cortez. How much time does it take to complete the music for the season? And do you have all the episode at once or weekly?
That's a great question, Esteban. So luckily the last 4 or 5 years of my career, I've been doing a lot of streaming, and I definitely will say I prefer streaming to sort of the weekly network thing, partially because it is approached more like a mini series or one big movie. So COVID made the end of season 2 a little strange, but for the most part, we spot the episodes months before any of them mix, and eventually they mix, a week or two apart, but we have time, to really think about it the way I would think about a film, where I can take 2 or 3 weeks and just, come up with concepts or work on a theme if there's a new theme that's needed, or a song that needs to inspire a theme. So at the end of the day, I mean, I think when I think about season 3, we probably had from start to finish somewhere in the realm of 6 months for all 8 episodes. But the first 3 of those months were writing and playing stuff for Eric, and going back and forth and getting notes, and as they still continue to edit the show. And then the last 3 months or so is sort of like mix every week or two, finishing up, and that's where we do a lot more of the recording and mixing and things like that. But it is more like a big movie or a mini series, which I feel like personally, to me, it's a lot more gratifying. It's a little less of a rush, and you're also able to like go back to something. If you're like, oh, you know what, I feel differently than I did a month ago about this scene, let me tweak it a little bit, which I don't get a chance to do as often on a TV show that's on network. So it allows me to, I think, be a little more careful.
Now you've done no small amount of wacky cartoon music, and pretty much the last character I expected that to be used for was Black Noir.
Yeah, Black Noir, and Black Noir is such a favorite because it's really interesting to think both him and Kimiko, we have 2 characters who are massively important, who actually also, the funny thing about both of them, but Noir specifically, is they're really funny and they don't say anything. I mean, they can, some of the interactions that they have are hilarious, but they also have these great moments. So Black Noir's animation idea, from what Eric told me, was, Eric's a big Disney fan too, and he sort of had this idea that Noir always had these characters in his head, even when we didn't find out till this season. But the idea is that these were his coping mechanisms as a child. He went to the this Chuck E. Cheese like Buster's place, and that sort of represented his childhood and who helped him get through things, who helped him get through the trials and tribulations of his life. They were kind of his, like, his imaginary friends slash, stuffed animals kind of thing. And they were with him all the time. And he used them to cope with things. And so it wasn't until this season that we were able to bring them to life. And it was interesting because part of it is when we first see the beginning of that flashback show where they talked about what happened in Nicaragua. There was a little bit of a Disney intro that Alex Bornstein and I both worked on, that had to be very Disney. That was sort of like just a fanfare thing that was super like smaller, almost like a pit orchestra from a Broadway show. But then after that, it gets really violent, really fast. And Eric actually said that that it needed to be more violent, when they were actually literally just beating the daylights out of Soldier Boy. Because it's cartoon, he wanted it to be as dissonant and out of tune and aggressive and scrapey as possible, to make it feel like it's as painful to Noir as it possibly could be, to make the audience feel what he was going through. And a lot of times I think with Noir, we did that because there wasn't dialogue with him. We had to sort of go a little further with his music, especially when it's, emotional like that, this season. So that was really a great opportunity to be able to do that. And then the death scene at the very end, was really an amazing way to tie it up. And I think the first pass we did of that might have been, it was a little too Disney, and it actually is like, okay, no, that makes it too funny. We actually kind of all loved this character, and we're sad to see him go. And we had to pull back a little bit on the animation quality of that to make sure that, that it kept enough of the emotion in it, to really kind of break people's hearts a little bit. Even though he was bad, he was, again, as the traditional boys way, they found a way to always make you feel for even the worst of the characters. And, I think hopefully I can help with that whenever possible.
Now let's talk about, on that note, the big bad of the show. Let's talk about the character arc that Homelander went through, especially that ingenious bit of scoring for the last shot of the season where he does Donald Trump on a guy who you weren't too sorry to see that happen to.
Yeah. Oh man, when I first, and like I said, I don't watch the shows until we spot them. So when we got to that, I actually thought the show was going to end on a cliffhanger when Soldier Boy blew up. And I really thought that was it. And I kind of I remember moving in my chair, and he's like, no, we're not done yet. And so I sat back, and then we went through this sort of the wrap up and found that the Maeve was still with us, and Soldier Boy was back in the chamber. And I was like, okay, got it. So you set these things, they could still have, and then it cut to to Homelander flying down. And I was just like, oh shit. I knew Kripke well enough to know that this is going to be a shocker. And I was like, but I didn't know it was coming. And the fact that it was so on the money to what's going on in our country and our world with power, and, and the sort of the tribalism of my side, your side. As long as you're on my side, you can kind of do whatever you want. Hell, it's even when we go to, to what's happened with, the Supreme Court in the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of very conservative evangelical folks who are okay with some pretty horrible things, as long as the ends are what the means are justifying, and vice versa. I think there can be extremists on both, that will allow things that probably shouldn't be allowed for that person or people that they've put on the pedestal as being the savior. And that's what people, I think, have done here with Homelander. And especially, the guy we all love to hate, who's actually the worst of the worst, is the stepdad of Janine, right? Yeah. And, and he's sitting there, and to just watch his face change. And there was, at one point, there was a time where I was like, oh, should we start this cue right after he starts going, yeah. And Eric was like, no. Watch Homelander's face. And then it cut to Homelander's face. Like, oh, yep, I see. It was right there. It's when his little side of his mouth just turns up a little bit. And it's that moment when Donald Trump goes, you know what, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any votes. And it's that little moment. And to be able to use that and send it, and there's so much going on with sound effects and so much important dialogue that it's hard to always be heard in the world of the boys. And so this was one of those moments that he said, okay, this is you, and you can take us out into the credits. We're not going to cut to a song or anything like we're going to do this. And so my pitch was, we've a couple times with Huey, once with Huey and once with Homelander, we've used this sort of like what Eric would call scratchy bad classical, where it sounds like the violin strings are going to sort of burst into flames. And so he wanted to kind of go back to that emotion. But I said, look, we should start with that, but can we actually have that combine in a sort of symphonic way with a warping, pitch bending version of the Seven theme for Homelander as we go to credits, and he was fully down with that idea. And so that was, it's one of my favorite things I've written so far for The Boys, because I do feel like it has so much of the elements that we love to do that sort of speak for our show, but also has that really there's something about a single violin, and we know whether it be Itzhak Perlman on Schindler's List, or a single cello with Yo-Yo Ma. There's something about a single instrument that immediately focuses the viewer, and there's nothing to interpret except for that one instrument, especially if there's no dialogue. To have this long shot where there's a single violin that's telling you what's going on inside Homelander's head, and that's the only thing it's doing, and it's one instrument. And to have a big moment where it does that for about 15-20 seconds before it sort of bends down and you sort of can like expand again, to have that really singular focus is such a cool opportunity for me to write something like that. And I think that's, it's funny, I've gotten a lot of notes on Twitter and stuff about that piece. And I think that's why. I think it's because it's very easy for all of us to relate to that single instrument that's giving you that feeling. And it's really fun to be able to do that.
Now, on that note, Francesco would love to know, what was the most challenging scene for you to score so far on the series?
Ooh, let's see. I think there's let's go. I'm just going to talk about, I'm not going to do the whole series. Let's do this season. I think the most challenging parts of the show are the really emotional parts, because Eric, and all of us, but Eric specifically, is very, very tuned in to being too pushy. Although there's tons of emotion in this show, but he's very specific that I should never make the emotion more. I should merely support it, especially when it comes to sadness and things like that. So for me, I think, this season, one of the things that looks like it would be easy and ended up not being easy at all is when Huey and Starlight break up. Because that's one of those moments that you could really push it. You could have it be super sad and big and whatever, and it ends up getting bigger once we get into the credits. But while they were on screen, it's a cello solo over top of some string, sort of, simple string chords. And we did a lot of versions of that where we would just change where the chords would change by a second or two. And it always had to do with either a quick line or something in Annie's face or in Huey's face. And Eric would say, no, she hasn't realized, or he hasn't realized that she's really saying it's over yet, or here or there. And so we did a lot of these versions where the music sort of was the same, but like the shifts in it would be massaged to make sure we didn't get ahead of our characters. And that's something that, you'd think that would be the easy one to score, and the one that would be hard to score is when like the penis explodes or whatever. But it's actually the opposite. It's that delicate, emotional stuff that has to be so exact in terms of timing and tone that we don't turn into, Eric doesn't like when people feel like they're watching a show. He likes to envelop them in the world and have them feel like they're in the show. And if we do too much with the music, it starts to feel like you're being told what to think or what to feel. And so often we pull that back, and a lot of it has to do with spotting and timing. I don't want to talk to it, but like there's the, my favorite example, Daniel, as a music editor, you'll get this. My favorite wonderful example of spotting and how poignant it can be, and it maybe goes to this last Homelander scene is, I remember in Forrest Gump when after Jenny dies, we cut to the house and the camera goes all the way over and gets to Forrest's legs and all the way up and up to his face. And you're sitting there. I remember sitting there in the theater going, why isn't the music starting yet? There's quiet. It's like literally quiet. And I'm like, oh my God, it's almost painful. And then he decides to get up and start. And then that's when that's when the music comes in. And it's such a brilliant thing, Silvestri and Zemeckis are so good at that, but they're, that takes so much restraint, and it takes understanding of what your characters are going through to say, he didn't, Jenny just died. He hasn't processed it yet. So don't help us. Stay out of our way. And when we're ready, we'll jump in. And it happened just at that right moment. And I think that's something that Eric and I try to do a lot in this show, is not get ahead of our characters, not get ahead of our emotions, and not be too pushy.
Now, you could say the first great composer for the Vote Corporation was Basil Poledouris for RoboCop. If you want to say, like, maybe Vote's previous incarnation. And you are going to be taking part in this incredible salute to Basil Poledouris. It's happening later in July in Los Angeles. So give us the details. What are you going to be doing for it? Why
Absolutely. So, well, I am first of all, Julia Michaels, who music supervisor, who is a dear friend, who did amazing things like Star is Born, and many others. Are the chairs of the committee that has been working with Bob Townsend and Steve Vox to make this happen. On the 22nd, we are doing a full concert at Disney Hall of Basil's music with orchestra and choir, and we're going to be playing all of his amazing music. I worked for Basil for 4.5 years, full-time out of college, on things basically from Free Willy 2 all the way through the beginning of Starship Troopers. And Basil was, I didn't have any family out in Los Angeles at the time. And he and his family really became my family. They invited me to dinner. They invited me sailing. I became very close with Zoe and Alexis, his daughters, and our kids are now friends. They're going to be at camp when I pick up my kid. Zoe and Angel will be up there. And it's just amazing. He was the most kind and authentic human being that I knew. The reason that he and John Milius got along so well, they were next door neighbors in college, and they used to go surfing together, and they would talk about the waves, and they, before they did Big Wednesday, they would do all of that. And they just had this simpatico of, they would get the heart of something, and whether it be the heart of what made Conan tick, or the heart of, what a family would feel like if another country invaded and it was just a disparate group of kids hiding in the mountains trying to save their family in their hometown in Red Dawn, or whatever it is. It's kind of amazing that he was so good at that. And so what this concert is really going to do, I think, I know Daniel and I talked a little bit offline, is it's really easy to find the film music that everybody knows live, and God bless John Williams, my hero, and he's the best there is. But to be able to go and hear the music of this guy who was so important in my life, but I think his music was more important to other people's lives than they know. When you think back to everything from Hunt for Red October and RoboCop to Blue Lagoon, It's My Party, Flesh and Blood, Cherry 2000 we talked about. And there's all these great movies that I mean, Basil could write a theme like nobody's business. And, and he had this amazing way of going from really big, like Conan, to super, super small, and be able to write just like a woodwind duet that would just tear your heart out, in something like Blue Lagoon. And man, I think I'm so excited the world's going to be able to hear that. So I'm going to pitch now. So please, there are seats left. We took a lot of the good ones early, right at the very beginning, at the very closest age. But there's lots of great seats left, and every seat is a great seat at Disney Hall. If you go to Disney Hall website, you'll be able to find it. It's on the 22nd, and I will be conducting an almost 10-minute suite of Basil's action music, which I won't tell you everything that's in it, but there may be some Farewell to the King and Red Dawn, which are two of my favorites, and many other things, which I'll be able to conduct and hopefully make him a little proud with the family and the audience. But for us, it's been like 16 years since Basil passed, and he really was like a dad to me when I was out here, and he, my career would be nothing if it wasn't for him. He introduced me to the people who got me my first TV show. He told them that I was worth listening to. He told them that I was worth meeting with, and I can never pay him back enough. I really can't. So
he's an amazing guy. Absolutely amazing. So they're going to have to pry the baton out of your cold, dead hands.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of tears, and there's going to be a lot of beautiful music. So I really hope that people will go and get some tickets and come meet me there, and hopefully you're just as moved as I know I will be that night.
I got my ticket the day it went on sale. So there you go. So what is up ahead for you?
Cool. Well, what's up ahead for me is we'll start with they have announced Boys season 4, which is fantastic. But before that, there will be a spinoff of The Boys, which is coming before season 4, which I'm not sure if they've announced the title, so I'm not going to say it. But it's very, very cool. And they have announced that our showrunners on that are going to be Tara Butters and Michelle Fazekas, who were my showrunners on Agent Carter. So I am thrilled to be able to get back together with them to work on another Boys property. I also have a movie with Seth Gordon and a movie with Tim Story that's going to come up next year, as well as my musical and the animated musical short that I'm going to direct and co-direct. And so that's all coming up. And I'm also doing a little work for Disney in their theme park world. So that's all I can say about it. But there might be something great to go see next year as well. That will be a lot of fun.
But would a potential Agent Carter movie be in 2 parts?
Yeah, everyone has very mixed feelings about it. I will say that I love my time on Agent Carter, and I got to do such fun music on that show. And and I got to have Haley Atwell sing for me too on an original song, which was definitely sort of a dream come true as well.
No,
so
I love the series. Love the series.
So much fun. I wish it had been streaming. That's the one thing I will say. I think that show would have had a lot more legs had we been able to touch on some things that you can't touch on a network.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess to wrap it up, again, with all, you have The Boys, really cool cartoon show, as it were. You've got, the Sky High Academy of The Boys coming out, season 4. It really is essentially Eric doing his spin on the Marvel universe with The Boys, which is going to be a heck of a lot more seditious. But what's it like for you just to essentially to suddenly find out this is like a Marvel universe?
Well, you know what? It's funny because I really think I think Eric is, I will tell you, he's so brilliant. We've been friends for so long because we love the same kind of movies. We've always, we met in Southern California, in South Central, on the porch of a house where we literally, we were both in a reforming fraternity that was similar to kind of like the Revenge of the Nerds of our little world, where it was tons of filmmakers. Josh Schwartz, who did OC and Gossip Girl, was our president for a while, and we were just a bunch of like cinema and film and music guys who wanted to also have fun in college, and I ended up sitting and talking with Eric about Morricone and John Williams and Raiders and E.T. and all this stuff, Back to the Future. And we just had this simpatico, and he always loved, even in those very early days, he loved serials. He loved comic books. He loved, things that had bigger lives. He hated, Godfather, Back to all these things that he loved things that developed into sequels and prequels and offshoots, because to him it's always about the characters existing in their own real world. It's not just that 2 hours. It's there's always a fully realized world that they exist in. And so now I think he's developed this fully realistic, world that, although it's all made up, he loves exploring the songs in this world, the company of Vought, all the characters, where the characters came from, what happened in World War II with this character. And I think that's the kind of thing that has always made him tick. And I think that he's shown that he's so amazing at it. And there's so many times where he'll bring something up 6 months later, and as I kind of mentioned, like it never even clicked, and he's like, oh well, that's because of this. And it's literally one line in an episode from last season set this other thing up, but it was entirely purposeful, because that's the way his brain works. And it's just so clever, and it invites a viewer, much the way anything like a Star Wars or an indie or anything we all love like that. It invites the viewer to go live in that world for not just one arc, but like for an experience. You get to meet all these characters and feel like they're sort of part of your family, and as warped a family as that would be in The Boys. And I hope that this universe keeps expanding. I don't know will there be a Boys movie someday? Will, God hope, maybe, who knows, maybe DC will come to Eric and have him, reboot something and create that kind of world somewhere else. But I know that there's always in his brain, it's always world building and history building, rather than just start in the first frame and finish it when at the end of the movie. It's always about building a world and having this much more literary form. And I think he's a genius, and I'm so grateful that he lets me come along for the ride. But I think he's going to be doing amazing things for decades to come. That I don't even know what they're going to be, but I know they're going to be super special, and I can't wait to write more for them.
Absolutely. Well, Christopher, I want to thank you so much for joining us at Film Music Live. I want you all to watch the seasons of The Boys on Amazon Plus, with its season 3 soundtrack available on Madison Gate Records. Thanks to La La Land Records for the giveaways of The Boys season 2 albums, and thanks to Mark Northam, our producer Dale Turner, Mark Banning, and all the people at Amazon and 42 West. And I'll see you on the next Film Music Live on July 25th at 1 p.m. when Michael Abel says nope.
Bye,
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.